Hi everybody, this is Ilya from NEAR, and we're here in New York on a rainy day discussing with Alex on Augur. And
Introducing myself, I'm Alex Chapman, lead dev on Augur at the Forecast Foundation. We're just a group of software developers right now working on a prediction market that runs on Ethereum. So I guess high-level overview of how Augur works?
yeah.
Yeah, sure. And I'm not great at drawing too much on a whiteboard, but I can kind of give like an idea of what the pieces are, just from a really high-level view. I actually never spell Augur.
Now it's not like the folder you type every day?
Literally never spell it, ever. No, because it auto-completes to A. So like, you know, if I misspelled it, I should get shit forever, but you know, if not, then that's fine. So I guess the two biggest components of the stuff that we make are a trading component and a oracle. So trading component of Augur, kind of what you'd expect in a prediction market. People can make markets by themselves. You know, we don't actually make any markets, totally decentralized. People just come in and make their own. So you can make a market on something like political, like who's going to win a particular election, sports games, or something more sophisticated, like some sort of a specific business hedge. You can make with scalar markets, which is something we have, prediction markets to track like a particular stock price. So there's a lot of different functionality you can get out of the trading portion. But it's also not that difficult to make. People can make markets and exchanges all the time using smart contracts. What actually sets Augur apart is the fact that we have a decentralized oracle. So decentralized oracle means when someone makes one of those markets, like an election market, for example, and then it passes the deadline where the election results have come in, the blockchain needs to know and the contract needs to know how to pay things out. So people who bet on the winner need to get the money that they deserve, and the people who didn't bet on the winner, they don't get to get anything. A lot of the ways that people solve this without using a decentralized oracle typically revolve around just a trusted party going in and punching in who won, and then the results come out. The problem with that is having a centralized party in a prediction market has a lot of risk associated with it. Pretty much every prediction market in history has been shut down, attacked, or has ended up being some sort of like an exit scam situation. So the decentralized oracle is really the super complicated secret sauce sort of part of Augur. So the way that our oracle works, somebody's calling me. We have a token called rep. Like I said, I'm bad at whiteboard, by the way, which is why I've just switched to talking and I'm no longer drawing anything out. We have a token called rep. When a market is supposed to end, the market creator had designated, when they created the market, someone to report. So someone to go in and do that manual process as described, where they go in themselves and say, yeah, this guy won. The difference is that once those results are up, there's a time period where anybody who owns rep can go in and say that's not true. And there's a preceding sequence of disputes that happen where the amount that they have to put up gets higher and higher and higher. Which, if that was the only system we had, which is the way a lot of other decentralized oracles work, would be a Keynesian beauty contest, which just means if someone
who can like go out and find more people to
exactly
put stake on it there.
Right, and whoever ends up having the most just wins. And as a rational game theory participant, you should just go with whoever has the most rep.
Yeah.
Which means we wouldn't actually be a good decentralized oracle. We'd just be a Keynesian beauty contest system. So the interesting thing about our decentralized oracle is at a certain point, we actually fork Augur. Within the Ethereum blockchain. So not like an Ethereum fork, like an actual system where our contracts are capable of forking into two different Augur systems. What happens is, in the election market, for example, if that reached a fork, there'd be a fork, let's say it was the 2016 election, there'd be a fork where Trump wins and a fork where Hillary won. Or maybe Bernie, I don't know. And actually there could be all three, because anyone can make, if it was a categorical market, for example, anyone can say, I would like for that child universe to become its own Augur once a fork occurs. The interesting thing about that is rep holders have to choose where the rep goes.
Where they want to end up.
Right, so even though someone could potentially have a lot of rep, and say, well, I have 50% of the rep, I'm gonna say Hillary won, because I was betting a lot on that. They can do that, and they will end up getting the money that was in the market. So it will pay out for the Hillary winners, but they have to spend a lot of rep to do that. And because their rep has to go to the Hillary universe, which presumably no rational trader is ever going to want to trade on, they have to burn a lot of rep to do that. And that's kind of the crux of our whole security model, The fact that they have to make their rep go to a universe where it is probably worth nothing. So all the security calculations we do, everything in the white paper is basically based on this notion of them having to burn more in rep than the market's open interest is. So even if they got all of the money from the market, they've overall lost money by performing that attack. That's
let's
sort of a super high level overview, and I've drawn absolutely nothing, and I'm sure there's a million questions, but yeah.
Sure, yeah. I mean, let's start maybe with trading, just to kind of give basic understanding how this all set up. So usually there's just a template of a contract that anybody can deploy to spin up a new prediction market.
Yep. Yeah. So those are called markets.
Markets.
It's actually a market contract. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's created.
And then so pretty much people just deposit, like if it's binary decision, they deposit on either yes or no or
right. So I'll actually draw out the different types that we have. So the distinct types we have in the contracts are yes/no markets, which you can think of as like you said, binary sort of thing, where it's will. I'll just do everything in terms of the 2016 election because for whatever reason, so we always talk about it. So it's will Trump win?
Yeah.
So it's either yes or no. In the UI that we have, the reference UI right now, for example, you would just see yes, and then you have to actually sell yes to.
I see. It's like you short yes, but
right. Yeah, and then we have categoricals, which we call cats. Categoricals, and these can have up to 8 outcomes. And the reason for that limitation is not a fun one. It's just a cost sort of thing. So on the Ethereum network, if we
you'll need to fork into 8.
Well, so it's actually it's not even that part. Technically, with scalars, you could fork into hundreds of thousands of universes, but someone has to pay for that. If someone was like, no, I think this universe was correct, they're free to make it. Basically, is the way that the forking works. The categoricals, it's that the number of shares that we have to generate. And when you're trading, the number of shares we have to send to people, including emitting logs for all those transfers and just all the associated costs with having that many shares, makes anything beyond 8 kind of get a little wild. I think there was actually the cost of just creating a market was too high originally. We could actually probably increase that, but there would probably be negative side effects that would provide such a bad user experience that it would essentially seem broken to anybody. There are worst case scenario trading situations where in an 8 outcome categorical market, if both people are reversing their positions
across all categories.
If you're reversing your positions because somebody had to have been short, which means so this kind of gets into synthetic shorts.
Yeah, maybe like for categorical, yes, no, okay, I buy yes or I'm selling yes. For categorical, you either buying one decision, you can buy multiple.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, so buying multiple, you can go long multiple, which means make multiple trades. The key thing though is if you short. So the way that everything works in the underlying contract system is all of our shorts are synthetic shorts. So it's easy to understand with yes, no. There's a yes share and a no share. If you short yes, if you say sell that, you'll get no shares. Right? Makes perfect sense. Categorical, if there's 8 candidates and you say, I want to short Trump, that actually what the system has to do is give you shares of all the other candidates. So if sort of what I was getting to with the synthetic short problem with reversing positions is if you're reversing, that means it has to transfer 8 shares per person twice. It has to emit logs for all of those and do all of the accounting for all those individual shares. So what ends up happening is a single trade, if they're both reversing positions, costs 3.5 million gas. So we could increase the outcomes, that's still under the block gas limit, but when you get that high in the gas limit for
you also need to pay for that and get into the block.
Getting into the block is the weird part because then you enter the part where paradoxically you have to pay the miners more because it's such a high gas price. So it's sort of a hard sell for users.
They'll not be able to fit anybody else.
So we could have that, but it's one of those things where I suspect people using it would be like, what? This is broken. What is going on? This can't be right. Categorical is the other type. You can have 8 outcomes, max on those. And then scalars. Scalars are not used very much in V1. I hope they're used more in V2 because these I think are the neatest type of markets. So scalar markets.
It's like a margin calls?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's so there's no actual margin. Things are sort of leveragey, but not actually. You don't actually borrow any money or anything. But the way that it might work is bet on the price of Apple, and then you could set a range between.
That's I actually don't.
Trade, I actually don't know what Apple's worth right now, but let's say it was somewhere between 1 and 200. Sorry, 100 and 200. You would basically track that price. So the way that we have everything set up in the UI, and it works differently underlying on the chain, but everything on the UI, for example, if you thought it was going to be 150, you could buy it anywhere under 150. You would actually pay that amount. So if someone was willing to sell at 145, you could buy 145. If at the end of market resolution it ended up being 150, you would make $5. And that's how the payouts actually work. So the payout system for everything is actually works as a scalar market, interestingly enough. Yeah, and we could go through all that, how that works on contract. But yeah, the scalar payout, there's actually 2 shares, a long and a short, and their payout is kind of on a range. And that's how that whole system works.
Yeah, about, like, settles that short at some point.
Yeah, so those are the 3 classifications of market. And again, on chain, we have 3 different creation functions, but they're actually all the same thing. They all work the exact same. All the math is the exact same in all of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is just a...
Right, it's much simpler. So you can imagine, I'll actually go into it. So there's like a thing called payout. We call them payout numerators, which is a misnomer right now actually in the contracts. It has to do with how we pay out invalid markets. But in yes, no, you can imagine there's a, I think the first one is a yes share and the second one's a no share. Don't quote me on that. I always forget which one it is, but so.
There's 2 errors in computer science, off by 1.
Yeah, exactly. So you can imagine this is the payout for the yes share, and this is the payout for the no share. If the market resolved, no, Trump didn't win. And this tells kind of the chain how to pay out the different shares. In a scalar market, it would look something more like, you know, 100. The reason, by the way, I'm making everything add up to 10,000 is sort of an artifact of how the contracts work for figuring out how to pay everything out and what prices people can bet on shares.
Do you issue like 10,000 of something?
So there's this concept in the contracts called num ticks, which everyone kind of dislikes because it's complicated, but we have not thought of a better way to conceptualize and program this notion. But the basic idea is when people are trading and people will get shares paid out, there has to be some notion of how many ticks they trade in. So you can imagine if you were buying something like on an exchange and you wanted to set a price for a share, you might think it's worth 89.5 cents. And that would only be possible if that exchange supported 1,000 ticks, I think. Or was it 100 ticks? Yeah, 1,000 ticks. Because there's basically 1,000 units of increase you can have. You can go from 89.5 to 89.6 to 89.7. If they didn't want to deal with fractions of a cent, you only have 100 ticks. You can only deal in that many ticks. So our underlying system for yes, no, and categoricals has 10,000 ticks. Right now it's an ETH. So that actually is fairly close to like trading a cent with current ETH prices. Yeah. So the issue is this is the payout is also based on those num ticks, and that makes it work out really, really nicely with making sure that all of the funds are actually like covered, and we don't have to do any weird rounding or division or anything like that. We just limit what you could have actually traded and what you get paid out. Scalars are more complicated. Scalars, we let people do custom amounts because 10,000 ticks does not always apply to every scalar market. You could have something very complicated. What if you're trading Berkshire Hathaway shares or something? You know, like it doesn't. Yeah, it has to be custom. Categoricals work the same way, but obviously there's more.
There's like per each category.
Yeah. Right. So this is Trump. It's Hillary. It's Bernie.
Bernie. Yay.
Bernie did it. We did it, guys. All right. Yeah. I guess Andrew Yang is the Bernie of this election.
Well, there's Bernie in this election.
That's true. There's Bernie in this election too, but they won't let him have it. But anyway.
So what is the current market on Augur?
What's the current what?
Well, current market on Augur for Democrats. Like, you know, this doesn't fit at all.
Right. Actually, people have pointed that out too. So interestingly, I mean, right now in V1 of Augur, people shouldn't create markets that far out. Because V2 is going to be coming out before that would actually resolve. And if the price of rep in V1 gets too low because of the fact that V2 has come out and everyone's kind of migrating the platform to V2, that affects the security of V1. Because as I mentioned before, in the Oracle system, you can imagine if rep is essentially worthless, they don't care if they have to burn it. If there was a lot of OI, for example, in the Democrat market, which is actually possible. So like, as a very specific example, if the open interest on that got up to let's say 3 million, you know, and the market cap of V1 rep was less than 3 million,
then
just buy all the rep and resolve the market how you want to. Right. It's a hypothetical though, so it's one of those things where we don't actually know exactly how it'll play out. It's something that we just we're actually working on messaging right now for that kind of like, just so you know, this kind of this weird thing.
Yeah, don't do that,
Yeah,
or this will happen, or this may happen.
It's like you can do that, but just know, like, this is how the game theory is going to work out there. It's everything that we do, we try and make completely game theoretical secure, but there's also the weird. We humans are weird.
Yeah,
and they don't actually behave.
Well, it's also like, I mean, you do have underlying like security, right?
Right.
So
yeah, and a lot of that is based on multiple assumptions. And if you read the white paper, for example, there's this whole issue of parasitic markets. Are you familiar with that?
No.
That concept. So parasitic markets are kind of not only the thing that Augur sort of can't solve, it's actually probably provable that it's an unsolvable problem. The idea of a parasitic market is, imagine I'll draw it out actually. So imagine there is an election market for 2020 and people bet 2 million on Trump, and people bet 4 million, and this is all on chain, on Yang.
I see who is your candidate.
It's Trump and Yang. Yang Gang, dude. He's coming to the conference. He's talking on Wednesday.
Yeah?
I gotta join Yang Gang now. So the total OI in this market is $6 million. So say you and I, just off chain, I have a bag of cash. I say I'll bet you $1 billion that Yang wins. Problem is there's nothing the chain can do about that. There's nothing our security can do about that. We can never know that. So there's no way that any system that we create or any mechanism that we create could account for that. Basically, the best we can do is, and this is what the white paper does, is it says we don't think there'll ever be more than this much parasitic OI based on the OI within our system. And that's the best we could do. So reading the white paper, and with that amount, I believe the amount that we limit that to is something like 50% of existing OI.
So 50% of this, or 50%
right.
of the...
So what we're basically saying is if there was 6 million on this market, our white paper is assuming there's no more than 3 million you and me bets
like
agreeing to use our oracle to resolve. If you believe that there's more OI than that, then the system can't be completely, totally secure on that. There's a lot of things that go into that. Obviously, it's kind of pedantic game theory-ish sort of stuff.
But there's multiple prediction markets. Yeah. There can be multiple prediction markets that are
right.
So
yeah, and agreeing to use our oracle for that when there's other options too. And it like I said, it kind of gets into a thing where it's purely pedantic game theory. I believe it's entirely possible there could be a lot more OI personally, and things would not actually break. Because again, like that, there's more reasoning on that. What if they have other markets and they want those to resolve correctly? Yeah. And presumably showing that the oracle resolved badly would have other negative side effects for them, and potentially their other markets. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Who knows? Yep. Interesting.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So let's say I create a new yes/no. Let's say Trump versus Yang. So when creating, I don't need to take a position in any, right? I just kind of offer this to somebody else to take positions. As a creator, do I take any cut on this?
Oh, as the creator for the market. Yeah. So every market has, so there's fees associated with all of our trading stuff too. So I'll draw it out here. Fees.
See, like trees.
All right. Yeah. I'm a programmer. I mean, that's how we do with everything. All right. So every market has a market creator fee. This is something that's set by the market creator, obviously. Yeah. Right now, I think fees kind of are around 1 or 2%, I think, typically. The expectation is that over time, they'll go to 0 because people should be competing with markets.
Fork it off and make it less.
But V1 markets, there's not a lot of competition, not a lot of high quality market creators. So people can charge higher fees, and people seem to be okay with that, generally for trading on things that have even as high as like 4% fees, which I think is probably way too high. But that just goes to the market creator. So when two people, the way that we do fee settlement is whenever a trade would make people sell both their shares. So if I have Yang shares and you have Trump shares, and we both want to close out our positions, and we get matched in a trade, it'll sell that back into the system and extract fees.
I see.
So we take fees in that case, and we take fees in the case when the market is over and you're just getting your payout from the system. Those are the two cases we take fees. If you're just trading back and forth shares and tokens, we actually don't, or the Augur platform doesn't actually take any fees. So these go entirely to the market creator. In V2, actually, this is a V2 feature.
Preview.
Yeah. The market creator can specify an affiliate fee. So the way that the affiliate fee actually works is they specify a portion of their market creator fees that can go to affiliate people.
So it's like a,
Yeah, so they can say, they can give 25% of whatever they get from market creator fees to anyone who
presumably will bring
brought
them
people
traffic,
to their markets. Right. And the way that's implemented, because it's smart contracts, is you just specify an address. So really savvy people are very quickly going to learn that they can just specify their own address. And but you know, for a lot of people that isn't the case. I mean, arguably you could sign up for like the Amazon affiliate program and do the same thing, but nobody does. So in practice, it'll be actually used that way. But, the other fee is the reporting fee. This is kind of essential too.
Oh wait, affiliate is defined not by market creator, but by like when you're actually doing the trade, you actually specifying.
So the percentage of their creator fee is specified by the market creator, but they don't actually specify an affiliate. There's no whitelist for that or anything. It's just something you enter in when you make a trade.
So it's like the front end will put it in transaction pretty much when. Okay.
Right. People will give links and it'll have an affiliate fee, and our UI will know how to interpret that, and presumably other UIs will know how to interpret that as well. Like it would be smart for anyone building on Augur to also build into that, obviously. Yeah. So the reporting fee is actually more important. It's kind of essential to the security of the system, but it is a function of the price of rep and the OI on the system. And this is how we make secure that whole system, where we try to guarantee, assuming a certain amount of parasitic interest, that if someone does incorrectly resolve a market, they will overall burn money. And we do that by adjusting reporting fee. So if you imagine the open interest on the platform is, let's see, I'll try and write this out. So if the open interest in the platform is 10 million,
that's across all of the...
Right, across all markets. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And we imagine that the rep market cap...
Why it's called rep?
For reputation. So to be short for reputation. Yeah, originally in the first iterations of the system, the way that it worked was you
have like reputation.
It was more sort of reputation based. Like you would buy reporting tokens for the right to report on markets, and they would get assigned to you. And there were a lot of iterations where... the game theory folks were progressively more and more cutting everything. Like this is not necessary. This is not necessary. So it's less reputation based now. Actually, there's no reputation.
It's more like stake and
Yeah. I mean, right now we actually assume, basically for game theory purposes, that rep is owned by two people. Like it should still work. It doesn't actually matter the reputation of the holder or not. You mentioned rep market cap is.
I mean, anything that's transferable is by definition kind of not reputation.
Exactly right. So let's actually make that 100 million, just so it's easier. If rep market cap was 1 million, then obviously something's wrong with the security model. Right now, rep is not worth enough to secure the system. And there's a multiplier that we have. I think for V2, we're changing it to the rep market cap should be, the OI should be 5 times, I believe, the rep market cap. That might be adjusted. But we have a formula basically for adjusting that. And what happens is when the rep market cap is too low, reporting fees go up. Reporting fees are taken from settlement and given to reporters for the people who hold rep. So basically by holding rep, you can participate in the system and then get those fees. Right. So presumably the higher this is, the more the rep market cap should go up, and the more secure the system is against someone trying to buy up all the rep and then take all the money. So this is kind of how we attempt to, in an automated fashion, our mechanism for adjusting the security of the system based on the rep market cap and OI. So right now in V1, the reporting fee is the base, the minimum, which is 0.1%.
Right. So reporting fee. So just for my visual understanding. So you have, let's say, a market. So as part of it, there's some amount of ETH locked up, and this issued some yes tokens and no tokens. We can freely trade this. It's like ERC20. You can, before this finished, you can also just like pretty much burn it and take out ETH. Like you, both people, show yes, no.
Yep.
Like you close the position and you take out ETH.
Right.
And then at the end, you have like when the oracle comes in, right? There's a way to pretty much close this up, and then the reporting fee is taken out of the full OI of this market.
Yeah, but based on the amount that they cashed out, right? So if they together, let's say for simplicity's sake,
there's two people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like 2 million here, 4 million here.
Right. Right. So then in total, I mean, so that means the total of the market would have to be 6 million OI.
Yeah.
So if the reporting fee was 1%, then it would be 1% of 6 million.
I see.
So
how else is this like? You don't have one-to-one matching, right, of yes and no token. So it is a lever, like what is it called? I actually don't know how it's called, like 4-to-1 kind of betting thing.
Well, sort of. I mean, so the prices that they paid for their shares are not actually something the system ever takes into account.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever they paid for them, it's something that in V1 we don't actually record. We have a middleware component that reads logs and tries to kind of show them what they paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
And in V2 we record that on chain, not for purposes of payouts, but just for purposes of showing them what their profit loss is and everything. Mm-hmm. But the way the system works is someone somehow acquires a yes share. Mm-hmm. If they're doing it through our trading contracts, it's, they did it by specifying a price they want to pay, and somebody else was willing to match that, either sell their own yes shares or take the other position as no. Mm-hmm. But once they pay that money to the system, if you think about it, they've purchased a complete set, basically, of yes and no. So they've bought all the outcomes that exist in that market. Together, then, they must pay whatever a complete set is worth. But it's irrelevant what each of them paid. All that matters is the system got enough to pay out basically this amount. Mm-hmm. So interestingly, the amount of complete set cost is always the number of ticks, by the way, too, which is, again, one of those nice properties that works in the chain. So together they came, let's say they just bought one share of each. So they collectively had to pay 10,000, but the person who bought the yes may have only paid 1, the person who bought no may have only paid 999 or whatever. Yeah. But then when they cash out, whoever won gets the 10,000. And we know that we have that because that's what they had to pay to get the sets in. Now the fees are taken out of it as well, obviously. So the way the fees are taken out is also just split evenly. Not split evenly, sorry.
Proportionally.
Yeah, proportionally, based on whatever they are getting out as well.
But I'm just saying, like, I mean, there's an underlying price at the end of yes and no. Like, if somebody wants to go and trade it on like secondary market, the price is defined by this.
Well, so the price is just defined by whatever people are trading. So there's actually an order book on chain, and people going in say what they're willing to trade for. Yeah. So just like any other exchange, it's not actually something like it's not like an actual betting market where somebody defines the odds or anything like that. It's just a open marketplace.
It's open marketplace.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Although for what it's worth, even with an underlying mechanism like that, there could be UIs built on top of it that kind of translate that into betting odds like that. So it's kind of just a display thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I see. So pretty much, I take out the yes. If I want to take no position, I take out the yes share. I go to some exchange. I sell it. Somebody buys it.
Right.
And then pretty much that defines the odds that
right.
I'm kind of, and like whatever position I like sell it here at, that's kind of odds I'm willing to take.
Yeah.
And then if, for example, this doesn't close, I can go close this up and say, hey, didn't work.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Cool. So by increasing the reporting fee, this is pretty much more reward to this to rep holders.
Right.
So presumably this increases market cap.
That's the idea. Yeah. In theory, in practice, like I was saying,
we have a
0.1% because right now the actual rep market cap is, I think, like, gosh, I don't even remember, but I think it's something like 200 million, and the OI in our system is something like 2 million. So we're wildly over secure.
Okay, great.
There's zero risk of that happening.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So we did this election 2020, and then things are happening. How does this pretty much Oracle feeds this into the market?
Right, so what happens is when the market expires, let's see, what's the right way to draw this? So, yeah. we did it, we figured it out. Okay, so the market ends, let's say, ends June 19th. So what occurs is at that time, a designated report window starts. I'll do a box. I'll call this the DR. That's what we shorten it to. The designated reporter is the person that the market creator designates, just an Ethereum address.
I see.
It says this address is allowed to go in and say what happened, say whether Trump or Yang won.
I see.
So the DR currently in V1 has 3 days to do that. In V2, they're going to have 1 day because we found that if they do show up at all, they show up within 1 day. If they don't show up within 1 day, they don't show up at all. So
people lost their key.
So there's a few, right? there's a few. Actually, interesting if they lost their key too. I don't think in V1 there's a way to transfer that, so they would just be shadowlocked basically if that ever occurred. So there's 2 things that could actually happen here. Let's say they show. Or they don't. No show.
Feel some decision tree is going to happen.
So in this case, the DR shows and they say Yang. And then in the case where there's no show, so the 3-day limit is passed, or in V2 the 1-day limit, it goes into something called open reporting. So OR. In open reporting, the no-show bond, which is something that the market creator has to put up at market creation time, which is rep, gets used for the open report.
It's just like an extra reward for somebody else to
exactly. And the open reporter, they're basically entitled to it once the market finalizes, presuming they reported correctly. So the no-show bond goes up and up and up until it reaches kind of an equilibrium. That's the idea of it. And that's based on something the system records. The system records how much people don't show up. And the more people don't show up relative to some target level.
The more new markets need to put.
Yeah, yeah. So you can imagine if 5% of markets have no-shows and we're targeting 1%, the bond will just keep on increasing. Where presumably once it gets high enough, people will show up, and then that can start decreasing again.
But shouldn't be like on per market basis, just like increase the reporting fee, like over time? Like let's say 1 day passed, nobody reported, you increase a little bit.
So the reporting fee is sort of a different
reporting fee awards all the rep oracles, or?
Yeah, it's not market specific. It's just for everyone. But yeah, and it's sort of a mechanism just to adjust the market cap. The no-show is very specifically just people aren't showing, which is making markets resolve slower. How can we adjust that a little bit? So if there are no-show, the OR gets a report. Let's say the OR reports for Trump. I don't know. Let's say in this world, Yang wins. So regardless of whether the OR or the DR reported at this point, things are going to be the same. Yeah. All that actually matters is who ends up entitled to the rep that was put in this report.
So DR gets the bond is like usually.
So very typically, I think in pretty much all cases that have ever occurred, the DR is the market creator. They just say I'll tell everybody. For just to be technically accurate, what ends up happening is when the DR does show up, the market creator gets the no-show bond back, and then the designated reporter has to put in a new bond. But in practice, that's just them putting the no-show bond in, just like what happens with the open reporter.
I see.
So at this point, Yang won. So a few things can happen. The market can resolve with this outcome. For that to occur, this has to go at least 7 days with nobody putting up a rep bond to challenge this and say that Trump won. It's actually a little longer than 7 days. There's a cadence of windows that go by called in V1 fee windows, and in V2 they're called dispute windows. And those are on a 7-day cadence, so it's possible that if this occurred at the beginning, it has to go a full one of those windows. So if this was reported at the beginning of a previous window, it could be almost 14 days for it to actually resolve. And there's ways in V2 that's going to give people opportunity to dispute it. To give people who have rep and who are looking at markets time to actually find it. If the window is too short, we risk both people.
I get 7 days. Why do you chunk it?
Because it makes it, so there's a few reasons. One, it makes it more predictable. So if we chunk it in like a regular cadence like that, there's no segment of time where someone could have missed out on a market. People can make schedules.
You're saying pretty much like every week I go in and check what's happening.
I go every Wednesday. Wednesday is my day to look at markets and pick out what I want to do. It's going to work a little different in V2. There's still a cadence like that, But there's other mechanisms we have to speed up reporting because, time is adding up here. We have 3 days and then up to 14 days, and then there's actually additional other time, and it all makes for a really slow resolution time. But let's say that goes 7 days and nobody reports on it, or goes the period of time it has to resolve. Then the market resolves. All right, cool.
That's,
yeah. Okay, so the market is final. And Yang won.
And then pretty much anybody can just go and
So
deposit their yes. And,
exactly. So now that the market is finalized, anyone can. There is a actual contract called claim trading proceeds. You can pass it in a market. It'll look and see what shares you have, see what to pay you for them, destroy the shares, and give you the money from the market, and then pay fees. That's appropriate. The other thing that could happen, though, let's say somebody disputes this. All right. So we're in, let's see, this was the initial report, so this is second round. And they say, no, Yang won. So when you dispute, what you have to do is put up, there's actually a formula for how much rep. It's, for purposes of this, we can just say it's twice the previous bond. It's actually different than that, and especially when it goes back and forth, it ends up being a different amount than that. But just for simplification purposes, let's say it's twice the amount of rep that they put up.
So did OR put up some?
Well, so the OR, or the DR rather, it's always going to be in V1, it's a little complicated. It's the initial report size. But for simplification purposes, and because in V2 this is how it works, it's just the no-show bond. So if the no-show bond was 1 rep, then the amount staked on Trump right now is 1. So to dispute that, you'd have to put up 2 rep.
I see.
Right. Then this can continue and continue and continue if it doesn't go this period with nobody disputing it until... So
if you put 2 and nobody disputes for 7 days, this is like finalized.
Correct. Right.
This guy loses his...
Right. So what will actually happen is if that... so this will be that one. Let's say it actually goes in 7 days.
Yeah.
Then what happens is... let's say this is the Trump rep. This gets sent. I mean, it doesn't actually get sent directly to this person, but in effect, it basically goes to whoever put up the rep for this dispute. So I'll call these the Yang holders. So what the contracts actually do is when the market is finalized, it looks at all of the losing bonds, all the ones that weren't for, that were arguing basically for the outcome that did not end up being the finalized outcome. And just takes their rep and then puts it into the bonds for the winning outcome. So when someone comes in and redeems their bond with the system, for example, this Yang bond, they'll just receive that rep. So it liquidates all of the losing rep and gives it to all of the winning bondholders.
I see.
And that actually, the way that we have the formula set up that I was mentioning, which it's actually more complicated again than just 2 times the previous bond, but it guarantees a 50% ROI. So if you think
you're correct,
right? If you think you're correct, it's extremely profitable to, or if you think that's the truth, really, not you're correct. Like the reporting is actually it's weirdly nuanced. Actually, just the concept of what's true.
Yeah.
There's some interesting markets we should talk about actually. But yeah, if you ended up disputing 40 rep,
you'll get 20 on top of it.
Right. You end up getting 60. Yeah, there's been some very, very interesting markets. One of the first markets, and actually I think the biggest dispute that ever occurred, I think it got up to either somewhere around like $80,000 worth of rep before it actually ended up finalizing, was will the weather be nice for the Bastille Day parade tomorrow? that was a description, and there was a link to a weather site that did not use the language good in
nice,
it.
Yeah.
Or nice, yeah. It was odd actually seeing it get disputed so much. The market creator was very, very adamant in our Discord that it was a valid market and that people should be able to find a Schelling point on what is nice or good. But it ended up resolving to invalid, which is arguably what it should have resolved to. Invalid is interesting too.
Oh, so invalid is like a separate thing, right?
Yes. So invalid is a special case. It's handled very, very differently in V2 than it is in V1. So in V1, the way that invalid works, I'm just going to erase some stuff. I'll just erase all that. All right. So for an invalid payout, it would look something like this in V1. So if you imagine it's a yes-no market, it'll just be an even payout. So this is nice in some ways and easy to understand in some ways, but it has a lot of really negative, weird side effects. And not every market that has an even payout, obviously, is invalid. There's also like a flag you have to provide that says, I intend for this to be invalid. Because you can imagine a scalar market, there's actually a fairly decent chance it'll end up just being paying out like, the same to yes, no, so just the middle. Yeah. So in this case, you can imagine it's not actually the same as like paying people back for their bets, which I think is what a lot of people expect for invalid. Instead, it just says, okay, we have to pay all outcomes equally because we don't know how to resolve this. So if
this only happens at the end, at the resolution time.
Yes.
Like you cannot just flag that this is invalid from the beginning.
In V1, no, right, which is actually one of the problems. And you can't even really glean it easily from how the order book's trading, because this is sort of weirdly baked into the price of things. Yeah. Like if I pay 0.4 for yes, is that a signal that a market is invalid? Maybe, because if it is invalid, then I'll actually make money on that, right? Because I'm paying less than the amount that I'm going to get from payout. But it's really difficult to factor that in based on this payout.
So pretty much people betting on yes, no, and invalid in reality.
Exactly, but the bets on invalid in V1 are very difficult to see.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's this. Like right. With the price, you're actually betting that it will be invalid, and
it's tricky, and it's especially tricky because invalid markets are sort of a conundrum in V1. Because people, enterprising individuals, again, everything is decentralized, so people are going to find everything eventually and figure it out. Have figured out that they can create markets with really tiny subtleties that mean that they should resolve to invalid. So, for example, people might make a market like, what will the price of Ethereum be at the end of April 15th? And they'll make the market end the beginning of April 15th, like the very start of the day. Reporters, what they have to do is, to be consistent, they have to say, what was it at the time the market ended? Yeah. If they can't know, then they have to resolve it to invalid. Which is unfortunate because people see these and it's so subtle that they just see April 15th, April 15th. Okay, that seems legit.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you have like 3 days, it may work, but yeah.
Yeah, well, so the thing is, even though there's 3 days, the kind of ethos is you have to know right then, because the DR could have reported right then, and you can't go back in time, sort of.
I see.
It has to be consistent.
Because if it's like a market price, you want the market price at that time, not like market price in the day.
Right. And if you imagine reporters kind of as a whole body, they don't want to get into situations where they're hurting themselves. Just because of when people report it or something. Like they're very intolerant, for example, of APIs that go down or provide different results to different viewers. There's a problem with ESPN because there are people who report in Europe and there are people who report in the United States, and they see different ESPNs. They do not display in a way that is easy. People actually discovered this. This is one of the weird, subtle, invalid markets, was they referenced ESPN. But this is kind of an issue for V1 because, like you said, there's no curation. Obviously, the thing is completely decentralized. We actually aren't involved at all. We just make the software. The best thing we can do is add things to a reference UI, basically for viewing the on-chain data that can help people. There's a few of those that can be added in V1, like looking at the spread in a particular market. Like, is it oddly gearing towards this, for example? We can look at that. And if so, try and make some guesstimates sort of on whether it's invalid. We can look at things like market fees. We can filter out anything with a market fee, like or we could have a default filter basically in our UI, anything that has fees above 5%. There were some markets with a 50% fee for a while, which is not even going to be possible in V2, but obviously that was like a way people tried to manipulate the system. For the invalid payout though, in V2, we're not actually going to do invalid payouts this way. Instead, invalid will be a tradable outcome on every market, regardless of whether you specify that or not. So you'll always be able to trade invalid. The neat thing about that is you can obviously trade invalid without having to do weird calculations, but also it gives us sort of and it gives everyone an insight into whether the market is invalid or not.
Yeah, and it's like you can hedge kind of as you taking a position?
Yeah, that's the other cool part. So you could use the invalid outcome to hedge. You could also, like one of the things we've discussed is building filters into the reference UI that look at what invalid is trading at. Like if there are any bids for invalid, say above 0.1 or something, you can imagine that we could have the filter have a default, or have the UI have a default
like,
filter.
Hey,
There's warning. This is probably invalid if people are trying to buy the invalid outcome for that much consistently. Obviously, there's a lot of questions about how a filter like that would work because it's gameable. Obviously, if someone wanted to just be a troll to a market,
just go and do that.
Yeah, but the issue is making sure that they, like everything else, that they have to burn enough money and time that it wouldn't be, actually economically advantageous to them to troll or to try and mask something as valid.
Well, I mean, yeah, you can say what is a position of invalid pretty much compared to actual decision, right? And then if it's bigger, or if it's meaningfully.
Oh yeah, if it's trading at 0.9 consistently, I mean, and there's going to be some formula obviously there too, because we don't want like a single dust order for 0.9 to hide a market, but if there's significant volume, whatever that is, maybe some portion of the overall volume on the market trading for prices above a certain level, then you can say with some confidence actually that the market is invalid. So that's something everyone's looking forward to a lot in V2 because there sure are a lot of very silly markets right now in V2. Actually, another really interesting thing about reporting is that reporters, their goal is to ostensibly to report truth and to distinguish these invalid markets and handle things like that. But really, at the end of the day, their goal is to serve traders, really to make traders confident that markets will resolve how the traders expect, which is actually a more subtle, weird notion that we weren't really sure how it was going to play out in practice. But there was a market that actually kind of exercised this notion, which was made by someone who famously makes a lot of invalid markets too. But I think this was actually an accident. But it was on the 2018 House election. And it was whether Republicans would maintain a majority. And the market ended, I believe, December 18th or something, somewhere in the middle of December. The interesting thing was, even though the elections happened before that, they don't actually take a majority until the next year. And the way that the market was worded, it was, will they take a majority?
At that point in time, pretty much.
Right, and it ends at December 19th. So technically, Republicans still had a majority, even though they actually lost seats to the Democrats, and the Democrats took the majority from the elections.
But not really.
Right. And traders had actually put, I think, 1.5 million in OI into this market, so it was getting heavy traction. And there was some debate about how it would resolve, actually, because if it was sort of the spirit of the market, obviously what traders had intended it for to be, it should resolve that Democrats won. But if it was sort of to the letter of the market and the description and the end time, then it should be either Republicans. There was actually even some people arguing it should be invalid because they were saying because this was known before the market got made, this shouldn't actually qualify as a valid prediction market and it should be made invalid.
You cannot pretty much.
Right. So there was vying camps actually within sort of the decentralized reporter world on how this should resolve.
I mean, there's also all kinds of things that can happen before. They actually take the seat, right? That can change that.
And there's plenty of other valid reasons things could be invalid. Interestingly, it resolved sort of where people had hoped it would for traders, which was Democrats. So it resolved in the spirit of the election, who won the election, which was interesting to see and nice that the reporters could kind of find a way to, amongst themselves, figure out what would be best for traders and for the future of the platform, which is what they kind of have to do for things to work.
Because they want more people to
And this is also what makes the Oracle problem so interesting, because it's not something that can really easily be solved with, for example, just simple programming, like maybe machine learning and extremely fancy AI or something. But a lot of these questions are sort of weirdly human. Like, what did humans intend by this market? That was one of the more interesting.
All right. So can you explain more what is this this idea of two split universes of two decisions?
Right. So let's say that's where the home was getting. If the dispute just continues and continues and continues, there'll eventually be some round. Let's say it's the 20th round, and this varies depending on what the no shaban was originally on how people dispute. But once it reaches a certain threshold, it will cause a fork in Augur. So when a fork occurs, for this forking market, anyone who disputed, who has any rep locked up, their rep is forced to go to those universes. So they may call a function that basically says redeem my bonds and put them in the correct universe. So let's call all the guys.
So when you say this universe, what this means is the rep smart contract, which is it just an Augur or
yeah.
It's a rep contract, right? You just fork it.
So it's actually it'll be a universe contract. And that universe contract has its own version of rep.
Okay, so yeah. So pretty much originally there's one universe, and then you like fork it into, let's say because of this, it forked into a new one.
Yep.
So it's just a clone of it where rep holders, pretty much here, it's rep holders of like Yang that pretty much got everything who staked on Trump.
Yep.
And here's Trump holders got everything from Yang.
Sort of. So what actually ends up happening is, I mean, so there will be a Trump and Yang universe.
Yeah.
In the Yang universe, when all the people who staked on Yang move their rep to that universe, it will mint rep for them in that universe as though they had won the dispute.
Yeah.
And similarly, in the Trump universe, it'll mint rep for them as though they had won the dispute in those respective universes. But it doesn't actually take it from the other universes. It just sort of says, you guys both won in your own universe.
I mean, the question is there original universe, or it kind of, like, is there original universe that just got destroyed?
So the original universe is essentially frozen forever.
I see.
So the original rep, for example, still exists, and anybody can move their rep into one of those universes, and they can't go back.
They just cannot like trade anymore in this one.
So trading continues forever, but nobody can create new markets, and no markets can finalize.
I see.
So any existing markets that haven't finalized also migrate.
And they also need to decide where to go.
So the markets actually don't decide. The markets just go to the winning universe. So the markets are forced to go to those winning universes, which is again why this security calculation considers the entire open interest of the whole system instead of just the open interest of like the particular market that it's forking. Because if someone wins a fork, all the OI in the system moves into that universe. So even though if they don't win that market, they've effectively won all those, which in a way makes sense as well, because if that force, whatever it is, has the ability to win that fork, then they have the ability to win it in future forks as well.
Yeah, they can win any decision.
Exactly.
So how is the winning decided? So
the winning is decided when the fork occurs. There's a 60-day window. There's a 60-day fork window. And by the end of that window, whichever universe has had the most rep migrate to it is considered the winner. Or if before that fork window ends, over 50% of rep has moved to one of the universes. That's just how a fork winner is determined.
So, but the people who are like forced into the other one, they pretty much just burned, like in reality, like because this is kind of got frozen, or like you cannot create new markets on it or anything.
Oh, so in the child universes, you can create markets. It's just the Genesis universe, the universe that had the forking market originally that's frozen forever. So in the Trump and Yang child universes, those go on their own.
So in theory, like these people can like keep going, create new markets, and trade in their own thing.
If they're and that's an important part of why the system works the way it does too, because if there is legitimately a group of people who believe that there's another truth to the universe, they can go on. They can. It's actually perfectly viable. It's hard to think of the exact scenario where this could happen.
So it'll be like a rep 2 pretty much on the market that will now be like its own thing.
And there would be traders that, it's really ultimately a decision of traders, whether they believe that or not. Like there might be traders who wanted a market. It'll probably be something more subtle than like whether Trump or Yang won. But you can imagine
something where like there's no actual truth. It's
right.
Like
or if it was like a sports game with a very, very odd call to it or something, and sports traders are like, no, we're trading in this universe where it was evaluated this way instead, because that's the way that we like to bet on things. So I could imagine some sort of a scenario like that, where maybe there's people who bet on a specific subsection of things, and they want people who resolve it this way.
It's self-selection pretty much into the space where all the validators believe into this.
Right. Like in the Bastille Day market, actually, there was a just
In the what?
in the Bastille Day. Will the weather be nice for the Bastille Day parade? You can imagine maybe there are people who like to bet on weird, hard to define things. Maybe there are people who want such a market, for example, to resolve as yes when it was sunny outside. And they could have their own universe, and then people who don't want to bet on strange,
Invalid,
difficult to word markets would go, no, I'm going to avoid that universe. But that's perfectly valid if there were two universes. It's just what people want to bet on.
But that have not happened.
Oh, no. I mean,
have you had fork at all?
No. Okay. I sort of suspect there's a chance that a fork will never occur. But the important thing is that the threat of fork always exists. Someone knows that.
I mean, it's like a slashing. It's like you'll get slashed. Don't do stuff.
Right, exactly.
People don't do stuff because they'll get slashed.
Right, and it would be extremely disruptive to the system, obviously, because there's a 60-day window where it's quite likely no new markets will be able to be created. People are kind of potentially panicked, wondering where to put their rep. I suspect.
Well, I mean, even when the fork created, you can start creating markets here, right?
Right.
So like, if you believe this should resolve,
exactly.
You'll go there and start creating markets.
But if it was something extremely subtle, for example, it might be less obvious which universe they should move their rep to. Right, and there's not really a good hedging opportunity. It's basically...
Well, you create a market in both.
That's the thing. If you create a market in both, though, I mean, you have to split rep into both. You have to split your open interest into both. You have to have less liquidity because you're splitting. So you could, if you had to create immediately, but it costs money, and presumably you are burning half of your money unless both of those universes end up being legitimate. So it is disruptive, and it would be good to avoid it, but it's important that it exists and functions for the game theory to actually hold up.
Interesting. And all of those timelines, you pretty much were deciding mostly around like how long it for people to check and kind of make decision.
Yeah. The 60-day window is essentially a thought process of how long would it take someone who has who is a rep whale to get their rep out of cold storage. So if you assume it's going to take them a month to travel around the world and
find all
to dig up
safes,
in some hidden place, where their hardware wallet is, and then give them another extra month to actually use it in their secure underground bunker.
Yeah, send transactions from 50 places in the world, random coffee shops.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, it is kind of just an arbitrary estimate, but sort of based on that mindset.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So what happens with Scalar Decisions? How does this work for Scalar Decisions?
So sort of in the same vein, when people report on a scalar, for example, let's say it's the price of Apple, a dispute for that could get particularly messy if there's not some very specific instructions on how to actually resolve it.
Yeah.
The argued method of doing that is point to a very specific singular source, like a API feed or something that will give you a historical time period so that there can be no debate about what the actual number is. If you did, for example, like a general resolution, like what's the price of Apple? It's very likely there'd be a dispute because it's off by a couple cents or something.
But like, let's say there's price which is like 118.83, and I believe it's 118.85.
Exactly.
And then somebody believes it's 118.81.
So
how like I pretty much go in and say it's 118.85, and then you want to go in and say, can you like bet on something else? Like
you could say 118.84, and then somebody else could say 117. I mean,
so it will like fork off into all of those universes at the end.
Well, so if there was a fork, yes, after you redeem your money, they would fork into those universes. And that would be bad, obviously, because again, like I said, that's extremely unclear. There's some just sort of rational processes that would probably go into that would prevent something like that from happening. So, for example, if you're really disputing that, obviously there's probably a Schelling point somewhere in here where people can kind of agree. Like obviously, if both of you had money on this, or even if you're just reporters, it's doubtful people would argue about amounts that small. And if you actually had OI to protect in that market, it's doubtful you would make more by disputing that small amount than you would just going, okay, that's close enough, I'll make enough money. A dispute like that would have to be driven by something kind of irrational, and it's difficult to prevent people from doing irrational things because they're irrational. So my guess is in such a situation there'd be some sort of a Schelling point, like, okay, we'll just agree it's 0.84. It would end up resolving to that. But theoretically, if there was such a dispute, any possible amount that could have been bet on in that market would be a potential fork universe.
I see.
Yeah.
So in theory, you can actually have like 20 forks.
Oh yeah, I mean, it could have thousands of forks if people are willing to pay them. Because in a Scalar market,
you only have 20 steps.
So it's not actually just based on what people report on, though, too. So any possible outcome that could have won, you can make a child universe, even if nobody actually got.
Oh, somebody can just go and like.
Yes.
When it forks, anybody can like, hey, here's another fork I want to create.
It has to work that way too, because otherwise there's sort of a attack in the forking procedure where you could imagine somebody, let's say this was a categorical, for example, and interestingly, Biden and Bernie are also running. They're actually like final candidates. They decided to be independent. And let's say Yang wins. Somebody who wanted to attack the system could just go Biden, Bernie, Biden, Bernie, Biden, Bernie, and not let anybody else do any disputes. And if it was actually Yang that won, there could be no true child universe. So we have to assume that attack could have occurred and let people make any universe that could have possibly been disputed or could have been the truth. There has to be a true universe, basically. So to do that, we have to allow people to make any universe that could have been.
All right.
Yeah.
That's a mess to display.
Yeah. So the display is a whole other notion. There's how that's actually displayed in the UI. It's because it's something that we have to show traders and reporters too. Basically, there has to be some sort of notion of choosing the truth that you live in.
Yeah, and like transfer into it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, transferring into it, and it gets even more complicated if you imagine a world where there's been multiple forks. So say the election market forks, and then in the Yang universe they have an argument over how many Twitter followers Yang has or something of that sort. Then there's a sub fork there. So I live, if you're using Augur, you would be using, I believe in the truth where Yang wins and had 1 million Twitter followers, but it gets more and more complicated. It could get more and more complicated, obviously, if there's multiple forks. Yeah. Again, it's one of those things that exists and it in theory works, but it'd be for the best if it never actually occurred.
All right, cool. Yeah, no, it's super interesting. Anything else we didn't cover?
Could go on all day if we got other stuff to talk about, but yeah, I don't know, nothing else pops in my head at the moment.
Hey. Yeah, we can close it up.
Okay, great.
Cool, well, thanks a lot. That was super interesting. Check it out on, I guess, white paper and the website itself. I mean, it's all live.
Yeah, on augur.net. Hang out on our Discord if people are ever interested or have questions. We're pretty much always there. Yeah.
All right, cool. Thanks.